Hello everyone, welcome to the React Native Show podcast, brought to you by Callstack, total software engineering consultancy. I'm your host, Łukasz, and today we're going to talk about animations, what they do to your app, how to do them well, and how they impact the app performance. And if performance is your top concern, you might want to check out the updated version of our Ultimate Guide to React Native Optimization. You can download it now for free. Link is in the show notes. To talk animation, who else to invite to the podcast than Catalin Miron. Hello, Catalin. How are you?
Hey, guys. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing fine.
Thank you.
So, thanks.
Can you maybe introduce yourselves? What do you do, and why are you such a animation fan? What led you to specialize in React Native animations?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to be as short as possible. So my name is Catalin Miron. I'm currently a mobile engineer working at 11 Labs, and I'm also the creator of AnimateReactNativecom, which is a platform where I'm sharing a lot of animations. It's a collection of more than 120 different animations. And I love animations in general. I have started since the early days with HTML and CSS. I was a Tuts Plus author. I have created a bunch of animations, and I just love animations in general because we're surrounded by animations in this real life. So everything is motion-based. So I'm really intrigued into this subject. So yeah, that's why I'm. And yeah, React Native because I was a React.js developer beforehand, and moving to React Native was easy, and nobody was doing animations. So I saw an opportunity there.
Awesome. And we will talk about your website at the end of the show. Also, if you want to check some of the talks, Catalin did a talk for React Native EU last year, and also talks for App.js and for other conferences. So if you search for his name in YouTube, you will get tens of videos about animations in React Native. And my second guest is Łukasz Walczak from Callstack. Hello, Łukasz. How are you?
Hey, thank you for having me here. I'm pretty cool right now.
So, Łukasz, I invited you because I know that you have some recent adventures with animations as well, and you are a maintainer of React Native Paper, UI library for React Native. So what about you? Tell us some more about your recent adventures with animations.
Okay, yeah. So I think that my adventure with animation started like 6 years ago or something like that, where only animated API exists in that time. And I remember that I read an article that your 5-star app should be, of course, performant, but it should also be accessible for everyone and should have some animation. So I started investigating that topic, like what I can achieve with animated API. And I was even creating some animation from social mobile apps. And yeah, even I had one presentation in Warsaw, also meetup related to the animation.
Okay. So yeah, let's start, guys, and let's talk about animations in general. So what are we talking about when we are talking about animations? So what do animations do actually to our application?
I can add a bit of an intro before animation. So I believe like the best products and mobile applications in general are doing two things well. The first one is features, and the second one is details. Well, the features, it's what draws people to the app, and the details, it's what keeps them there. So the details is what basically makes the difference between your app and the competition. And when we are talking about details, it's all about animations and micro interactions, UI animations, and everything that has to deal with users achieving a particular goal as seamless as possible. So I believe an animation inside the mobile application is this small or tiny or big detail that is going to help users feeling more familiar with the things that they are doing or actions they are doing inside the application. And it's enhancing the user experience overall.
How about we talk about the words that you said? You said layout animations, animations, and micro interactions. Can you tell us the difference? What are those?
Yeah, so micro interaction, it's an animation, and its goal is just to provide a feedback to the user based on his action. And it's going to help users to visualize how the interface moves or behaves, even though it's just, it's a pure digital glass and everything is purely digital, and they are just touching a screen, basically, that's just a glass. So that's a micro interaction, just to provide some feedback, a direct feedback, because users, they want to know when something happens on the screen after they touch the glass, or they want to know they need to be informed based on some updates on the app. They want to know how much time it's going to take before they will get some response back, right? So this is just a small, tiny micro interaction that's going to help users or inform users and provide feedback. And in terms of UI animations, like a carousel, for example, it's a UI animation where things are moving based on user action. Again, it's incorporating more animations that are going to run most of the time all at once, or simultaneous, or in sequence. This, for example, when rendering a new list of items, you can apply a UI animation for each individual item to appear with a particular delay, which is called the stagger, and also exiting. So if you remove that element, it's going to animate, so not snap directly into place, but animate move it outside. It's just natural feeling, I would say.
I like how you mentioned in the beginning the swipe down to close modal thing. It is ubiquitous right now. It's a established pattern to do that. But I remember that maybe 5 years ago, it wasn't that way. We had the access at the right top corner to close things, and not the gesture-driven actions like that. So I really like how those animation patterns are getting standardized, we can say, into like very well described user actions.
I believe that right now, from the user perspective, we are even expecting some kind of patterns in the apps. Like in the Gmail, we have swipe to left, for example, to archive the message. We are expecting this swipe down to close the module. We have also pinch to zoom, for example, for zooming the images. Or even from the Instagram or other apps, we are expecting also that, for example, if you have an item in the list or an image, we are expecting double tap to like it, for example.
Yeah, I remember I gave a talk at React Day Berlin a while ago, 2019 or 2020, and I was discussing exactly about this topic of because users, especially on the mobile side, they have so many expectations because they have so many predefined patterns on other applications. When they are going to install your app, you should be pleased that they have installed the app, but you should also keep them. So that's why the features and the details. So if you have unmet expectations, or you haven't met the expectations of users inside your app, you are going to lose them. So they're going to be really disappointed.
It's not as easy as just build the interface. You also have to think about the interactions. You also have to think about the standards that other apps follow. And I remember when Tinder was promoting, let's say, the swipe to reject, or swipe to, what's the opposite of reject?
Accept.
Swipe to match. It's actually swipe to match. the pattern, and then that pattern was everywhere suddenly. And right now in Slack, there is new functionality in Slack. Maybe it's not new anymore, probably a couple months old, but there is this catch-up functionality when you have to like swipe left and right for new messages on Slack.
I remember that a lot of apps were using that pattern in the apps. Right now, even there is an app to which allow you to go through your gallery and pictures, and if you would like to remove them, you have like all the images stacked, and you can swipe left to delete an image and swipe right to keep it. So it's just easy way to control the amount of images in your on your mobile phone.
So this like ties really well into what Catalin said, that there is a functionality and there is the detail. So the functionality is to perform an action, like match with someone or like delete the photo. But then if you provide a good user interface to it, if you provide a good interaction to it, people will stay longer. People will stay in your app instead of like choosing another solution. I think that we're like a good example of like applying animation to make user interaction smoother, to make it easier for users. How about some bad examples, how we can overdo the animation and maybe provide users with not so good user experience?
I think that you have already answered that. So it's like overdoing animations. It's a bad example of animations. So there are multiple apps, like quite popular applications in the App Store, that are overdoing animations. So yeah, I don't know if everything is just a confetti and everything is all over the place. And if you remember in the past, there was this press exit or press quit. You have a window and you need to press quit. And all the time when you were hovering that window, the window was jumping to a different position, and you're just catching that window to quit the program. This is exactly what happens when you have too many animations, because it's distracting the user. So when you give the phone to your mother, your parents, or to someone that have never seen it, and they are just blown away by too many animations, I think this is a sign that you need to reduce those. So usually doing too many animations, it's just a bad animation. I don't know how to explain more than that, but and of course everything, like I'll give you a concrete technical example. Don't use Spring for opacities, because it's going to overshoot that animation. So it's basically because the opacity, you cannot see an opacity lower than 0 or greater than 1. So usually when you use a Spring animation, it's going to go beyond that interval. So it's good to use just a timing function like ease in, out. Just don't do overshooting. Basically don't go beyond that interval. So that's one thing. And also keep in mind when using Spring animations, for example, feel how the mass of that element feels. If it's a bigger element, it means that the mass of that element is going to be greater. So when you're using Spring animations, you should increase the mass, for example, and things like that, right? To just make the entire animation more natural, physics-based animation, yeah.
I have two thoughts. Maybe I'll start with the latest one about the mass. It's such an abstract concept. In the beginning, you said this is just a glass and we need to provide a feedback. And now we are talking about physics and about mass of imaginary object on that glass. And I can see a future when people will interact less and less with physical world, and all of a sudden we will have this concept of mass, of physics, of Spring animations, just as imaginary objects on the glass, and not as physical objects on the actual Spring, the actual like the weight of some object. It's funny to me to think about that. Another thought that I had when you said about overdoing animations, I recently, and I'm not proud of it, but I recently installed the Temu app, the shop from China or something. They do like this crazy early 2000 web page style of banners and shiny things and bells and whistles and all of that, and it's a headache to even look at that, and you all constantly have timers how much time you have left to order something. This is a prime example for me of overdoing this too much. This is like playing on those slot machines when it's designed to give you this dopamine boost, and it's not pleasant to look at all, but I guess it's designed this way.
It can overwhelm the user.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're tired after a while of using that application, it's definitely, there are too many animations.
You will not make the connection with the app. You will not be satisfied from the user perspective.
I guess they're aiming for something different. They're aiming for the lowest prices possible. I uninstalled the app because, let's switch subject from this
I'll
app.
give you another bad example of animations, and that's the timing animation. Like, for example, if you just want to showcase, the animation itself to the user, and you just say 10-second duration for that entire animation, and you just make the user wait just because you want to showcase your beautiful animation, that's also quite bad. I see quite a lot of those animations nowadays for some reason. I don't know exactly the reason, but I see those quite heavily used. I have created this bouncy animation and I just want to bounce it 3 times instead of 2 or something like that. And you just make the user wait until something actually happens. And that's, if it's not interruptible, it's quite bad, because I don't know. I don't want to wait. I know exactly, if I'm not a one-time user of your application, I know exactly where to go from point A to point B. I don't know. I would like to buy something. I know exactly the path to buying that product. I don't want to wait for spinners, loaders, or I don't know, some Lottie file that's playing, I just want to go straight to that with as less friction as possible, as minimal friction.
This example gives me such a great segue to the topic that I want to talk about next, performance. You said users don't want to wait. Users want things to be as fast as possible, and if it can be as fast as possible and as nice as possible, that's great. But at the end of the day, we want to perform an action and not wait for something to animate or wait for something to load. So I can see, going back to our functions of the animations, I can see animations play into performance from both perspectives. We can have animations that slow down performance or are not performant themselves at all, the stagger or something like that. Or we can use animations to increase the perceived performance. We can hide something from the user. We can hide some loading states, so we can occupy user attention for like 1 second with something else while we are shuffle things around in the background. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's you made quite a great point here. Exactly. If you're waiting for some backend response, or you're doing some tasks that are quite heavily, I would say, you can always show something to the user or do something. I don't know, like you have a button, you press it, and underneath you're making 3 different requests. You can either like show, I don't know, some progress indicator. You can do something that will keep the focus still. The user is, you're not going to lose the user focus. So you can do those heavily calculations underneath. So you can perform an animation just to hide this complexity that you are dealing with. But again, too many animations, I think, when it comes to performance, this is a subject that I see a lot of developers talking about, but there are no concrete examples that are going to showcase, hey, if you're doing ABC, you're going to ruin the entire experience on Android devices, for example. But doing too many animations is going to make the app perform slower, nevertheless. So coming back to the previous point, doing too many animations, it's also going to ruin the user experience, but on the same time, the app performance. So it's always a trade-off. But a performance boost, don't do too many animations. Don't overdo it. Just keep it at the minimum level, but also add animations when performing some really heavy operations underneath, like fetching or doing some filtering or quite some heavy operations that are going to drop some JavaScript frames. Always is great to come with an animation or with a micro interaction as well, because users are going to perceive that as a communication layer from the app to him and vice versa as well.
Yeah. I can also see in your example about doing too much animations and then at the same time doing some heavy background work. The case from the project that I work on, where we have to bifurcate, make two different versions of the same interaction for low-end devices and high-end devices, because we want high-end devices to have the best user experience as possible for them. But this playbook, this heavy background work and a nice, visually pleasant animations that does a lot, will not work for the low-end devices. So for the low-end devices, we have to write that animation either in a simpler way or not do animation at all in order for that background work to not stagger the animations or something like that.
Yeah, I believe a good example of this fallback can be like reduce motion. For example, when you have reduce motion turned on, you only have like fade in from a particular direction, or just fade in, simply fade in, and quick slide animation. That's all you have basically. So there are no like rotations, no nothing, just a fade in from bottom, for example, or a slide from left, but quite quick animation. So that's it. So you can think about low-end devices when you need to perform like the simplest animation possible to overcome the performance degradation. You can always just fall back to a simple full fade-in animation, or just fade-in, fade-out animation.
Yeah.
So also in terms of reduce motion, I remember that in paper, we had an issue created by someone that we should take into consideration of disable some animation when the reduce motion is turned on. So all the components in paper are themable. So we have a provider where we created subscription we added even listener to listen on reduce motion changes, and we added that Boolean value into our theme. So in animation, you have a properties scale, and depends on reduce motion enabled, it's 0 or 1. And then in animation configuration in the components, we are basically multiplying the duration by the value from the theme. So in that way, we are able to disable the animation to not run it when reduce motion enabled is turned on the device.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, that's a quite nice tip actually. Yeah, really good. Yeah, Yeah, it's reduced motion. It's really nice, especially on Apple side. I think they nailed the entire experience. For example, on my Mac, on my laptop, I'm using reduced motion, and just moving from a window to another workspace is like really seamless. And you cannot even notice the animation. That's another good point about a great animation. It's an animation that you are not going to see it because it's part of you, basically. It's meant to
so
be
you
there.
use it as a productivity booster so that it's easier for you to go between desktops, Windows, stuff like that?
Yes, yeah, because I don't want to wait again for things,
Yeah.
you know. I don't want to wait for the slide. And usually I'm a keyboard user, so I'm using the trackpad, of course, but when switching between different workspaces, it's just keyboard. So I don't want to wait for that transition. I hate transitions in general. Like if they're not going to, if I have to spend 1 second every 1 minute for changing those workspaces, it's like it's going to add up, right? So I just want to, as fast as possible, go there. So reduce motion is the way to go from.
Yeah, I am
my case.
I am so going to do it right after we record this. I'm going to try it out because I'm also I like my setup to be as productive as possible for me. So I have these weird shortcuts that I created just for myself. I'm gonna try it out. End of digression. And let's go back to the subject of animations and performance. Next question to both of you. Do you have any examples of challenges of working with like heavy operations and animations at the same time in the client's projects?
I can start. I have just a single one that comes to my mind right now. It's about Rive and Lottie, for example. Like I had a customer in the past that he was trying to do like a really fancy animation, I would say, really hardcore animation. A lot of pieces were moving together and from 3D to 2D and things like that, which from my perspective, it's hard to implement, first of all, and second of all, it's quite hard to get like pixel perfect in terms of animations. So my suggestion was, let's create that into a Lottie file or a Rive file and just playback it, right? You can also interact with things, especially on the Rive side, like Rive animation. So when you have to deal with those like quite heavy animations, always suggest, hey, can we create a Lottie file or a Rive file and just play back it to the user instead of just, I don't know, recreating it pixel perfect and avoid ruining the experience on other devices that cannot handle such complex animations.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I think it's more like a challenge, or not even a challenge. But some time ago, I was creating an animation for like gas pump counter, which measure the money which you will spend on the petrol, and I didn't notice earlier, I guess, that you are not able to animate the text value. So I was kind of surprised that I started googling that topic, and it turned out that you have to either use React Native Animatable Text Library, which is a fork of React Native Text, and it supports animated value as a text, or you can just use a common trick, which is using the text input component and animate text prop with use animated props from Reanimated. So I was kind of surprised that you have to like find a workaround for it.
Yeah, compare that to Swift UI. Yeah, unfortunately, this is how it is. Text input. It's an old hack. I think on this topic, there is this set native props. It's not mandatory to use Reanimated for that neither. So it's the only way, unfortunately. But Animatable, I think it's by Johnny Burger. He created it. So kudos to him, yeah.
We shared some tips on like how to work with performance and animations. you can have two different experiences. Remember about like text, this native props, this works for every component in React Native, right? You can just bypass the React Native and send props directly to native that way.
Yeah, and it's quite fast. I'm not even sure if it's passing the bridge.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to wrap up the talking about animations in React Native in general with some do's and don'ts. And we covered a bunch of them already, like don't overdo animations, care about performance. What else? What else can we say about? Let's start with do's.
Do learn interpolations. I think interpolations are the king. Interpolation is the king. Because once you are going to start visualizing how interpolation works, you can do a lot of things faster and performant. So I'll give you an example. The bullet point for don'ts is don't use, for example, an animated value for each individual style property that you'd like to animate, but instead use a single animated value and interpolate that value based on your needs. So you have a value that's moving from 0 to 1, and you'd like to have a scale that's moving from 0 to 1. That's easy because it's the same value, but you would like to translate that on the x-axis from 0 or from 100 to 200. You can interpolate the value of the animated with the interval 0, 1 and remap that interval to 100 to 200. So when the animated value is going to be between range 0 and 1, your output value or remapped value is going to be between 100 and 200. If you had to create a shared value or an animated value for the translate text, for example, you'll start from 100 and kick the animation for that shared value as well and map it. It's really unmaintainable code, basically. So I'll start by doing interpolations as much as possible and don't create an animated value for each individual style attribute that you would like to use, because it's going to be quite unmaintainable.
It almost sounds like a reactive way of using just one source of truth for this single animation and just run everything on top of that one. What's the observable in the language of MobX, right? You have one observable and then you can compute it and derive other things from it. So that's the same, I guess, mental model here.
Yeah, it's a value to rule them all, basically.
Yeah.
It's like an animator, or it's an animation orchestrator that has a single starting point instead of multiple ones that converge.
In our ultimate guide, we have a section called use interpolation as much as possible, and it's just summing up what Catalin said. Like, it's important to avoid too many shared values all at once, and you most likely, in most cases, you just need one and interpolate. That's it.
Yeah, and coming to interpolation, you can extrapolate that and create multiple animations. Like, for example, you have a carousel. Usually with carousels, you just have a single value based on which you are going to derive multiple animations. Like, you have either the X value or the Y value of that scroll position that you can interpolate and animate the items within that scroll view or flat list. It doesn't actually matter. So yeah, it's quite. Yeah, I always think in terms of interpolations. In my head, I always print out the graph. It's like I have a value from this point to this point, and I would like to remap it to multiple different ones. So I don't know how to properly explain that. gave it a try, and I did my best at App.js conference a while ago. But again, it's like visualizing the interpolation. It's quite an interesting thing to exercise, I would say.
I highly recommend that talk. I actually watched it today in order to like prepare to talking to you. I watched your talk, and I remember the graphs from interpolation, how you explain let's say the sticky subject, right? The sticky element in the list you can do by just interpolating values, and it's so much so simple if you explain it that way. So let's link the talks that you did in the show notes. I feel like we are jumping around between performance and animations and do's and don'ts. And you mentioned the guide, and we are supposed to talk about the guide today. So I want to plug the guide one last time. Maybe not the last one, but these tips that we are talking about, you can find them in the Ultimate Guide to React Native Optimization. There is a link below to get to know, let's say, Raif and Lottie. We describe them there. We describe how to do interpolation, and we are sharing a lot of the tips and tricks for performance, not only animation performance, but your app performance in general. If your app performance in general is low, then your animations will suffer from it. So you have to like keep your like ground level performance on mind constantly, so that you can actually add those extra things in your application, not only the features, but also the details. If you want to have the details, if you want to have the good UX, user interactions, you have to think about your state management. You have to think about your background tasks, stuff like that. And I think we can wrap up this section with this nice plug. And let's talk about your website, AnimateReactNative.com. Can you give us a few bullet points, what it is, how often do you update it, what can we find there, stuff like that?
First of all, thanks for shamelessly plug my platform. Yeah, so since I'm doing animation since React Native, it was in private mode basically. So I'm a really huge fan of animations, and I was doing quite a lot of animations since that period, and I wanted to just give it to everyone basically. So I've created this platform called AnimateReactNative.com, where I'm sharing a collection of animations that involve animated API as well as reanimated, but also gestures and math and different solutions to problems which I've encountered or other developers have encountered while creating, like while animating things. So I've created as many as possible. There are some missing sections like animated login, for example, or different dots indicator for a carousel, but those are reusable components, copy pastable. The last 40 different animations, the last 40 animations are written in TypeScript, and I tried to keep the API as simple as possible and to conform with other lists, for example, or buttons or switches, like the same API. Basically, it's a copy-paste replacement for different animation components. So yeah, this is why I came up with AnimateReactNative.com, because I wanted to share as many animations as possible, and hopefully everyone will learn from those, because there are some interesting animations that are doing quite a lot of things underneath. Even though the output is really small, underneath is doing quite a lot. Like different algorithms, for example, for calculating some distances and how to apply some math or trigonometry into your animations, and how to create this illusion that the particular element is following your finger with a particular angle. So quite a lot of interesting concepts that is not meant to just be copy pastable, but also you can learn from the source code. Just to give you some insights, to unblock you from the job that you're doing.
Yeah, and guess what? I have someone who is actually your user here. So, Łukasz, how about you give us some user perspective? What did you find interesting and nice on the website?
Okay. So I have so many thoughts. So in general, there is no one single right way of doing animation in React Native. So the key is to learn by doing it. And it's awesome that currently we have a lot of different resources from which we can learn. The Catalin platform is one of them, definitely. He also created a lot of presentation related to the animation, and I guess it's also your must-have. You have to connect everything. So I started, for example, refreshing my knowledge about the animation from watching the talk, Catalin's talk. Then I was creating some animation back in the past, but I decided to refresh the knowledge, so I subscribed the platform, and I also learned a lot from that code, from the code which is deployed on the website, because on one of the talk I learned that index -1, index +1 can be confusing. So I understand then, based on the carousel animation from the platform, how it actually works. Another thing is that the prop, which you can even can be forgotten, like cell render component, and I understand it's actually in some cases necessary, especially when you have flat lists rendering some items, and you have to understand that if you want to get item layout, especially item position like X, Y values, you want to measure the cell view, not the render item. You want to measure the cell view. So on item has to be attached to the cell render component. And I collected a lot of key learnings from that code, which Catalin is uploading there, just by doing those animations. So firstly, I was just copy pasting the code, checking it, and then I was, based on the video or the GIF attached to the animation, I started recreating it, and then I was comparing the code and checking what can be improved or what I'm missing, and so on. So yeah, that's my perspective.
Yeah, it's a powerful concept, not only in animations but in programming in general. There are different ways to get to the same user interface, let's say, or user interaction, and you have to experience few ways before you find out what's best for your user case, for your use case, for the things that you want to do. The most performant one is not always the best one, because you also have to care about code maintainability, and also you have to care about performance on the other hand. So you have to balance many different angles in order to land on the one that is appropriate for you. And animations are complex subject in particular, because this is not the first thing that we do as junior developers in our code bases, right? We first have to know the basics of React, JavaScript, all of that, algorithms, and only then, as a cherry on the top, as Catalin said, as something, the detail, the something extra, we do nice user interactions. But in our products, we don't want it to be an afterthought. We want to be an integral part of the whole experience, because that is what keeps users interacting with your application. So yeah, I think that's a nice wrap up. Actually, I Yeah. So let's wrap it up. Thank you, guys. Today's episode, I was joined by Catalin and Łukasz. We were discussing animations and how animations play with performance. We talked about the features of your applications, about the details of your applications, what is the impact of animations on performance, and what is the impact of bad performance on your animations. We discussed some do's and don'ts of creating animations in React Native. We plugged the ultimate guide to React Native optimization. We plugged Catalin's website, which is AnimateReactNative.com. And I spent a really nice time with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
As a goodbye, I want to say to our listeners and to our viewers, let us know what are your experience with animations, what challenges you faced, what tips do you have. Would be also grateful if you share your feedback about this and other episodes that we do. You can find the link to the survey in the show notes, and also sign up for our newsletter to be up to date with all of the new things that we have for you. Thank you.